Hi, everyone at home. We are now live, actually. Apologies for that. We've had a bit of a mix-up and on my end, and we've set our speakers up as well. So a few minutes late, but I'll hopefully be able to make up the time. Welcome to July's BrisJS event, where we'll be hearing tonight about Gatsby JS, some TypeScript, and some GraphQL. Now that you can all see the things that I've been trying to present to you, but wasn't actually live yet, and now that you can hear everything, I'll go straight into the Slido link. Slido is where we're going to be collating all your questions for the speakers tonight. It's a good way to manage that. And you can upvote other people's questions if you share that question and you're like, hey, this is really cool. Please answer that one first. Those kinds of things. Yay, everyone on the channel is happy that the stream started. Apologies, everyone. Technology. Okay, so all good. Now, hopefully you've got that. You've got the Slido link that I've pasted in the live chat on YouTube. And we've got our speakers waiting in the wings. I'll go through my BrisJS preamble. We like to do this at all of our live in-person events, and since we're all distributed, I still think it's really important that everyone can acknowledge the traditional owners of wherever they are right now. If you can go and do your research and find out exactly what the traditional owners of your site were, I think that really helps us to understand and help pay respect to its elders past and present. So thank you very much for doing that. And if you're not aware, RSVPs, even though we're not doing these in-person events and I don't have the same logistics of making sure there's enough pizza and enough tables and chairs and things like that, it's still really important to be able to see numbers come in and see how our attendances are, even now that we're distributed. I take some stats from YouTube, but I also use the YouTube attendance, the RSVPs that are on there, to understand everyone that's keen on joining this event and which events gain more traction and what kind of things you're interested in hearing about. So thank you for doing that. If you're not aware, BrisJS has a long established code of conduct. It's a harassment-free experience. That means online as well. So we want to make sure that there's good behavior in our online spaces, just like this chat channel and the ability to go and post questions to everyone. So thank you very much for doing that. If you're not aware and you haven't made yourself familiar about that one, please find it at brisjs.org/conduct. I love to hamper on about this one all the time. Requesting a talk or submitting a talk is super important to me because I always need speakers. And you'll see me badger people on Twitter all the time in the nicest possible way to try and be able to get some speakers for every kind of event. If you're at all keen, or even if you need some support to get started, please just pop up an issue on our GitHub. And excuse me, frog in my throat. An issue on our GitHub. And I'm able to go and then, have that dialogue with you, sort out scheduling. And we do something like this where we put little tags, little labels on each of those issues and try and use them for scheduling purposes into each different month as we go forward. You get plenty of opportunity to confirm and reconfirm, and we make sure that we have a good lineup going forward. And thanks very much for our two speakers tonight for doing that and jumping in at last minute there as well. So that was really valuable. Thank you very much. If you're not aware, we've got a bunch of socials. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on YouTube. You should know about the last one there, and you've probably seen some of my tweets on Twitter already. If you like that kind of thing, Facebook, it's there as well. I try and mirror most of the posts that I put on both of those. And we've got brisjs.org. That one's just a place to centralize some of the links and some of the things that we have. So for example, the present link has some information about presentation of facilities in the actual in-person events, as well as some links. The past talk section needs a good update, and that one will refer back to our YouTube. The jobs link I'll jump to straight away is really important to our community, where you can directly get some recommended bits and pieces. That's all put together from our GitHub issues as well. So some folks go on there and post an available open position on our GitHub board, it gets tagged with the jobs and opportunities tag, and it suddenly appears on our website there. So we try and make sure those are culled every month or two as well, and make sure they're all current. If you're interested in any of those, please follow up directly. You can comment on there as well. If you've got any questions, or if you've got a job to post and you're not sure how to get started, please reach out to me. My usual Twitter handle, or you can @ the BrisJS on Twitter, or Kevin V at brisjs.org is all available. So we've got a few community sponsors. Now that we're not doing giant pizza events, we're also sponsoring Zoom because it's that one essential tool that we're all using these days during our COVID crisis. Console Connect has been nice enough to provide that. I work for Console Connect. Sorry, PCCW Global. Console Connect's their product, launched in Australia. If you weren't aware, and they've been great sponsoring all our pizza and all our events going forward. So the Zoom Pro is on them. Thank you very much for supporting our community, folks. I know there's probably a whole bunch of other colleagues that are there on the stream at this point. They've got a bunch of open positions, still seeking different things like senior and mid JS developers, Java and Kotlin software engineers, systems engineers. So if you're in need of any of those kinds of roles, please get in touch with me. I'm happy to send you all through. There's also a link there on TinyCC that will just take you through to their LinkedIn job opportunities page. But they're always interested in starting a dialogue if you need more information. Also, another sponsor, and I alluded to this earlier, is Wallaby. Wallaby is producing all these really cool software development tools, these productivity tools where you might have heard of Wallaby JS or Quokka JS. They go and do things like run your tests interactively in the background and show these like test results, these highlights inline in your code. It's a really wicked little ability to have in your IDEs and provides that fast feedback loop. So Quokka also does real-time evaluation in there as well. So, you know, if you add two variables together, you'll see the result on the side, things like that. So really cool little tools. Some folks on the Gold Coast there said, you know, we'd like to help sponsor you guys and give away a license to one of our tools. So what I've been doing the last few months is putting up a question on our Slido. It's under like an open poll. If you can answer that question in the free text field, put on your name and contact email, then I can get back in touch with you. And if there's multiple winners, we'll run a random number generator and pick you out of the list. So good luck to everyone. I'll post some of those details up in the Slido soon once our speakers get started. And I will randomly create the question based on the content from our speakers. So it encourages you to pay attention. So thanks very much to them for sponsoring, and there'll be another one next month, so stay tuned. If you're not aware tonight, you've come to see Gatsby and TypeScript Blazingly Static by Sarah Smith, and you're also going to see TypeScript and GraphQL by Aaron Powell. Those are our two very important speakers tonight. Without too much further ado, I'll just make sure that everything's good to go. I'll stop sharing now. And I will be turning off my video and kicking over to Sarah Smith, everyone. Virtual clap. Welcome.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for the intro. Pretty happy to be here virtually. There's a huge technology extravaganza for me. So I've probably got the most over-engineered setup for tonight's presentation. I'm surrounded by cameras and lights. It almost looks like a studio in here. So what that's all about is I'm trying to make it a little bit more attractive for folks to actually listen to these kind of presentations. And I've actually got my green screen behind me so that I can sort of do the whole TV presenter type thing. So if I have any breakdown in my technology, I hope you'll bear with me. But otherwise, Welcome to my journey into Gatsby. I am not a web developer, really, by trade. However, when I need to, obviously, I dabble in web tech, and I have my own personal web presence, but I've been wanting to move into that area for some time now. So what you are going to be taken on right now is actually really just my initial dabblings with Gatsby. So if you are someone who's thinking about trying out Gatsby and wondering what that early phase is going to be like, hopefully my experiences will sort of illuminate that just a little bit, but I'm definitely not your expert. So having said that, just give me a sec. All right, and as Kevin said, Slido for questions. I can see the YouTube just out the corner of my eye there on the second monitor. But if you have burning questions, please just jot them down into the Slido as you listen to the show. So grab your phones. I'm also going to be talking up a couple of URLs throughout the show, and I won't be able to sort of leave this scenario that I'm in right now to actually bring those URLs up on screen. So I invite you also to have your phone or maybe even your laptop ready to jump on a couple of these URLs. So there's some interactivity for you. You don't get to just blob on the couch, or at least if you are blobbing and eating your takeout with one hand, a spare hand for your phone with the other one. Okay. All right, so it's going to be hard, but I'm just looking at that chat. If anyone out there listening to this right now is currently a user of a web technology of some sort, some kind of thing that chucks up web pages on the internet, I know in my past I've used PHP and so on. Could you please just jump in the chat there and just type a couple of characters to represent what that is, if that's like PHP or you know, any kind of web tech framework. Try and see if I can get that thing scrolling fast. Let me think of some other ones, even like Google's App Engine kind of counts. Surely, folks, you must have used like you know, some of the Python-based ones. Dropping a hint here. Oh. Yeah. All right. The thing about it is, there's a million of these things. There is so many web frameworks, and they've been around for like 20 years or longer. I think my first dabblings in programming were actually with web frameworks. So how is it that, like, you know, the 90s, that was like 15 years ago, how is it that we now suddenly need another web thingy? Seriously, do we actually need it? Well, I came and looked at Gatsby because even after all these years, I think there is still one big problem that needs solving. And I'm alluding to it here in these points. I hope you can see them. Sort of points. Playing with the toys. Anyway, so the thing about Gatsby from kind of a business standpoint, and that's kind of where I'm going to start with in the beginning of this presentation. I'm going to try to do some live coding later. But the promise of it is you get to do your authoring side, which is presumably your non-technical side, in that separate environment, which is conducive to authoring, you know, some nice online tools. But then the development side is still developer friendly. So you've got a stack which is conducive and set up so that you're producing cutting edge technologies, progressive web apps, or whatever. But in order to have that set up for us developers, we're not necessarily making a highly technical experience that the authors then have to wade through. So in a way, the promise of it is that both things are blazing. Your authors can still jump onto some kind of system. So that's a promise of Gatsby. There's a lot of other explanations that are available about what Gatsby is and why you would want it and so on. So I just wanted to add that perspective that I have. I've looked at technology diagrams that show what Gatsby sort of looks like from an architectural point of view and all that stuff. But for me, this is the core idea of Gatsby, the fact that you can use sourcing via GraphQL to pull in content and then still have this amazing tech in the back end. This is very annoying. Okay. Sorry about this, folks. I'm having difficulty moving my slides forward. So on this journey, one of the things that pulled me into it was I went to WordCamp in August 2019. The photos you can see on the screen are ones that I took myself at the event. And you can see it's a pretty diverse and awesome crowd. These folks have got a lot of energy. I was really amazed by people from all walks. We've got developers freely mixing with folks who are just there, all about content. You've got sort of designer folks in the middle who are just building websites. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of commerce going on here. So people are solving real-world problems, they're delivering value, and as a result, there's success to be had, both in technology terms, delivering solutions, but also for folks who need to make a living out of it. The photo down on the bottom right there is Corinne Haynes, who runs her own virtual assistant business. And Corinne's skill set is really there for folks who either don't have enough time or they just need somebody to jump onto WordPress for them and click a bunch of buttons. So she's sort of in the virtual assistant space. And I know you think that those VA folks are there to pick up the dry cleaning. There's a lot more technical folks around, like Corinne. And I was really impressed by the business models of people that are around the periphery of the WordPress community. So there is people needing value and there's people delivering value, which I think is really promising. And that was one of the things that drew me to it. Like I could potentially be involved with this group. So the key was, how was I going to bring my mobile experience to this picture? Well, I thought about it and I thought, well, the first step, what I'll do is I'll try to build myself my own consulting website, and I'll use WordPress to do that. I chucked it up there, started putting in content, and as I started creating more and more content, it was a case of every time there was a new thing, I needed an SVG or a testimonial thing, Google reviews or whatever, the answer is plugins. And plugins are a double-edged sword. Obviously, they provide a lot of functionality that you can quickly get, and it's also a problem because you have this whole ecosystem of these plugins which tend to colonize WordPress websites. This is there we go. That actually worked. So if you have a phone on you, I'm gonna, I'm not even gonna lie that this is, partly a plug for my practice. Obviously, what I'm trying to do, but also, if you wouldn't mind just humouring me, and if you've got a phone, try loading up www.smithsoft.com.au. That's a HTTPS in front of that. And load that up on your phone and just have a look at it. Like, all right, it's a WordPress website. So when you go there, there's going to be a server somewhere that'll run a bunch of PHP scripts that'll generate a complete HTML document. It's going to be transmitted over the web to your web browser on your phone and render that page. In the page, you've got SVG graphics. So I'm trying to sort of use some low bandwidth graphics that are embedded in there. Tried to do a few things right. However, this is really not going to work for me. And then when I press this, it's going to go twice. Yep, that's the slide I wanted. What happened? I got 28% on Google PageSpeed Insights. So if you do have your cell phone out and you want to try this at home, grab the URL in your paste buffer, Google for Google PageSpeed Insights, and paste in the URL for the website in there. And you'll see that on mobile, it's 28 out of 100. So that's a composited index of 5 different metrics. One of the worst of those 5 was time to interactive, 13 seconds. Ouch. So yeah, obviously I wasn't real thrilled about that. What happened? Like, why did it come out that way? Like, why did I get a slow site? Like, it's easy for us as technologists to look at people's sites and say, oh, look, you know, you need to do this, you need to do that. But the thing is, like, no one who's in business, like, trying to run their own business. And in my case, I was consulting, so I was working 50 and 60-hour weeks on client sites writing mobile apps. I outsourced some of the stuff to some other folks to get that done. And I never planned to make a slow website. I even tried to do a few things to make it fast. What happened? I got 28% out of 100, so that's pretty awful. It's slightly better on the desktop version of Google's PageSpeed Insights. There are things you can do, but you know, I never intended to make a slow site. So one of the points about this that I think is super interesting is that Gatsby is not just about being a static site generator. It's not just about all these architectural claims that you could make for what Gatsby is. Carl Matthews, who's, I'm pretty impressed with this young guy's work, like he's open sourced everything he's done. What he was trying to do was to create a system that had baked in all of the things that you want to do to make really fast websites and actually bake them into the actual system of Gatsby, so that it just, he says, Gatsby is like a compiler that takes all the pieces of your website and makes the fastest website possible. So there's a URL there, if you can see that one, that's my GitHub, github.com/smithsoft. If you go there, I've put an open source project up there that's just a basic sort of Gatsby project that I used for learning. And if you jump onto that URL, github.com/smithsoft/Gatsby Typescript, the button just below at the top of the README has a link to that main page. And I found that it executed really fast. I found that using a tool chain was fast, and I think Matthews really nailed that idea of having a developer-friendly ecosystem for the coding side of it. And there's absolutely no doubt, because if you take that website URL for the actual Netlify site, the deployed site, placed in Google Page Insights, it's quite a bit faster. And I did at one point get 100%, and then I added some content that went down a bit. But it was a really worthwhile experience, kind of an eye-opener. So I spent some more time on it, and what I was trying to look to do really was see if I could take the elements of this Gatsby stack and turn it into something that could actually become an offering. So it needed to be sustainable. It was all right for me to create a toy website, and I'm in the process right now of using some of the sources. So there's a in the Gatsby plugins. There's a Gatsby source WordPress. So the theory is that, like, you know, if you're this folks who have a WordPress website, I might be able to offer to you something that's super optimized for your mobile phone using customers. And I could say to you, look, here's your new mobile website, and I've just pulled all of the content off of your WordPress site and given you a fast website, and then, you know, that could be a business, right? Now, in order for that to actually play out like I wanted, what would have to happen is I would need for that process to be sustainable. And I'm talking about, for me as a software engineer, it would need to be repeatable. I'd need to have a pipeline all set up. But most of all, I don't want some brittle, flaky software that's going to be very hard to work with. Now, for me, that actually means TypeScript. I'm a C++ programmer, really. I've been working with typed languages my whole life. But also, when I'm doing my software engineering process, what I really want to be able to do is collaborate with other folks. I want to be able to collaborate with my customers and ingest designs that are coming in. So for me, all of that stuff together needs to have sort of a workflow. So I want to be able to see if that would actually happen with Gatsby. So what I'm going to try to do now, given the issues we have, I can hardly believe that I'm contemplating this, but hopefully, Kevin, if you're listening, I'm about to just go and walk over to my other account.
Yep.
And hopefully we can switch over to that, and we can do some live coding. So the architecture of Gatsby is really that it's a React application. So that, of course, means that
perfect.
So it's a React application. So that means it's also a Node application. So we've got video of me, and we've got our screen share.
Yep, everything's perfect.
By the way, all of this code is on that GitHub URL that I shared just a short while ago. So if you want to check that out, please feel free to do that. What I thought I'd do is just have a look at the sort of workflow that you get Okay.
One thing we might
I'm
have
not
to
going to
ask you
try
to
and do
do
all of
is
this
to
because
just
I'm
increase the font
mindful
size
of the
if
fact
possible.
we've got a second speaker here. So what I was going to try to do was, I'll just see if I can run this project as it is. I do like how with Node and using Visual Studio Code, you get this nice little menu here of the options that are inside of your package.json. So each of these is a script from my package.json here. So each one of these scripts comes up here. So when I want to run a script, I can just click it here in inside of my IDE. So some quite nice integration. Just trying to run this slow because my laptop is trying to run Zoom and everything else all at once. Hooray, it's finally run. So what Gatsby's doing here is you can see currently it's set up to pull some content out of the contentful content management system, which is sort of, I guess, a competitor in a way to WordPress, although it's sort of permanently headless. So by default, Contentful doesn't have a visualization layer that comes with it by default. So this is my GraphQL. So what's happened here is the Gatsby instance pulled a whole bunch of data from the REST API on Contentful and exposed it to a server running on localhost as GraphQL. So what I would want to do if I was going to be rendering that content inside of here would be to actually create this GraphQL query. So I would be trying to fetch a post. So I'll just go through that quickly so you can see what that looks like. So do a contentful blog post. And it's all self-documenting. So within a contentful blog post, I'd have the title. I obviously have to select one first. So I'd want to use parameters here. It should be filter. And I think I called one of them GraphQL. except that one has to be equal to. Okay, well, I think I've taken up, coming up on an hour, so I'm going to have to, I'll call it quits there, given the technical challenges. I just don't have enough screen real estate. So, all right. What I would suggest, if you want to follow along with what I've done, I would, I've created a little exercise for myself, and if I had another half an hour, I would go through and try running this. It actually works pretty well. But I'll leave it there for now and hand it back to Kevin so that we've got time for the other speaker and also for questions. So that'll be it for me.
Thank you. Let's have a look at what questions may have come in. I was just caught in the middle of putting up our Wallaby JS license giveaway. So I'm just hitting enter on that and fixing up my typos. And 1 second. There we go. Cool. Audience Q&A, questions. I've done such a good job. Nobody's put any questions in. We've got a bit of commentary there on the live stream. So I think the general consensus there is that they say, yeah, absolutely, that accessibility has a few problems on those sites. So, you know, you need to have accessible names and things like that in your rendered sites, you know, and then static sites are always going to be heaps faster. It's like one of the main comments there. So, you know, unless you're doing really small pre-cached diffs and things and single page apps driven by JavaScript, you're still going to end up having a fast initial load time there through your static sites generated through Gatsby. So thanks very much. That's, yeah. Do you have any final closing comments?
Yeah, I think that's right, that obviously static is going to be faster. But what I didn't realize, I think, was like WordPress, obviously you can use Cloudflare and so on to cache what's actually being produced by that WordPress instance. So you think it might come close, but I think the real cost with those plugins is that because it's not pre-rendered, you wind up with this huge collection of different JavaScript and CSS files that are all fighting with each other for supremacy inside this web page. So even if it is delivered, when I looked at the Google analysis, there was, I think it was like literally 30 or 40 different JavaScript files that were being served up by all those dozens of different plugins. So yeah, there's a lot to it. But anyway, I'll hand off now to Aaron, and thanks for your patience. Thanks for listening.
That's all right. That was great. Thanks so much for presenting, and thanks for taking us through some of the benefits of Gatsby there. And you know, if anyone's keen to follow up there's plenty of links that are on your screen right now. Sarah can help answer some of those questions. And if you do have further questions and you didn't quite know what to ask in the moment, please feel free to add some of that stuff to Slido, and we'll circle back around and still be able to have a chat with both our presenters. Thanks again, Sarah, and you know, virtual round of applause from everyone. Thank you very much for that.
Sorry about the technical challenges.
That's all right. It happens. This is the world we live in, and so I applaud you for trying something new there with the multiple streaming options and all sorts of fancy stuff. Like, well done. Cool. So we'll crack straight into this. I will have to. Well, I'm not going to go back to my slide deck. I'm just going to. Sorry, unpin that one, pin my video, and here we go. All right, everyone. Now the audience Q&A is back up and the live polls are open. So if you want to get in on that Wallaby JS license, please do go check out the Slido. Aaron Powell has been kind enough to jump in there after we had some unavailable speakers this month. Thanks so much for your last minute jump in, and thank you for now taking us through TypeScript and GraphQL tonight. Over to you, Aaron.
Sure thing. Let's fire up the screen share, and I'm glad to be your backup singer for the night after everyone else was unable to attend. I'm going to assume that it's come through because Zoom has vanished and I can't see anything else. Welcome to tonight's session. We're going to be just covering off a bit about TypeScript and GraphQL. And more appropriately, like the code generation side of things. So like Sarah was talking about that in her session, the fact that TypeScript gives you that type safety in JavaScript is really exciting for a lot of people that come from that type safe development background. Myself, I came from a .NET background. So I was used to things like C# and F# and VB.NET and stuff like that, and like having types. So JavaScript is obviously a little bit scarier a language without the type system as stringent as a strongly typed language. So that's where I've always gravitated towards TypeScript. Now, I suppose to introduce myself, my name's Aaron Powell. I work for Microsoft as a developer advocate. I'm based in Sydney, and I have been doing web development for, I'm going to say, at least 15 years now. So I remember a time when Netscape was the browser that we were trying to target. So we've come a long way. And this is actually all the slides that I've written for tonight. Was a title placeholder slide while I talked. We're going to jump over and do some live coding. I've bumped the font size and stuff like that, but I know that some people, it might still be a little bit challenging for you to read and things like that. So I've actually opened up VS Live Share on the instance I'm running. Here's a QR code that allows you to jump into that if you so desire. That will be up for about 10 more seconds while I quickly navigate across to where I'm doing all the coding and stuff from. But it's all going to be done in VS Code, and I'll put all the code up on GitHub at the end of the session, and I'll tweet out the links and tag BrisJS so that you can grab a hold of it and have a play around with it as well yourselves. But like I said, without further ado, it's straight over to VS Code. Now, what I've got here is a really basic application that has some GraphQL in it. And if I come into here, and let's see, can I hide this panel across the top? Hide video panel. Nope. Hide floating control. That's better because I couldn't see the top of my screen. So this is a really simple GraphQL schema that I've started to write. It's for a trivia application. So I've got a question which has an identifier for that question. It's got the actual thing that you're going to be asked. It's got a correct answer and an array of strings, which is the other answers because it's a multiple choice. And then on the schema, I've created two operations that we can perform against it. We can either get back a question by ID, or we can just get a random question. That's what we've got defined here in our types. And they're exposing those as the TypeScript, as the GraphQL schema. So the query is just that type that's defined above. And the backend code, or the backend data store that I've got here is just it's a schemaless database called Cosmos DB. So things like Cosmos DB and how I'm going to run the GraphQL server and stuff like that, they're relevant to hopefully what you're going to take away from this, because I just needed somewhere for this stuff to live. And if we have a look at the way that the data is stored, it's slightly different to that model that we had. Yeah, we've got an ID and we've got a question, but correct answer, it's got underscore in it, and incorrect answers has underscores in it. And so they're kind of named a little bit differently. And we've got a bunch of other properties, which is kind of realistic. Like the data model that you've got to represent your application might not be the same data model that you're exposing out through your GraphQL endpoints. And so for that, I want to make sure that we can work together nicely. But let's come back to our schema and let's start generating some TypeScript definitions for it. So for that, I'm going to use this tool here called GraphQL Code Generator. So it's got a whole bunch of different ways it can generate code. And we're going to look at the backend TypeScript generation. But if we've got time, we might try and get to some React front end. But if you're using Vue or Angular, they're available there. If you're using other languages like C# or Java or Flow, you can also generate for those as well. So that's GraphQLCodeGenerator.com. All right, so we're in here. I've installed a whole bunch of dependencies because you didn't need to sit here and watch me do npm install and download like 100 gigabytes worth of data. But the most important ones that I have installed are the code generator itself, which is GraphQL CodeGen/CLI. And then I've got a couple other ones that, that we'll be using from the code generator. So they will get normally prompted for you to install along the way, but I've pre-installed them just to save time. So we're going to run the code generator. There we go, GraphQL CodeGen, init. So I want to set up the code generator. So this is going to just give me a bit of an interactive step through of what I want to do. So you see here, it's prompting like, what kind of application are you wanting to generate code for? Well, we're doing a backend API. So we'll just hit there. Where is our GraphQL schema? So I could be pointing to an external GraphQL schema. So it could be running on a server somewhere, or I can be pointing to a file on disk. In this case, it's a file on disk, and that's going to be in /GraphQL/schema.GraphQL. And what do we want it to generate for us? Well, I want to generate some TypeScript types for me. I want to generate TypeScript resolvers. So if you're familiar with GraphQL, resolvers are the way that you handle the get or like the query requests or the mutations and subscriptions, etc. I can also get it to like generate things to connect into MongoDB if I'm using that, or a couple of other things that we can see in there. But I just want the TypeScript and the TypeScript resolvers. So where do we want to put it? We're going to put it into GraphQL/generated.ts. And finally, do we want to generate an introspection file? So this is going to give us that sort of like documentation, IntelliSense and stuff like that, like while we're playing in like the GraphQL playground, or if we're wanting to expose some API docs, that could be useful. So we'll generate those. What do we want to name the config file? By default, it's codegen.yaml. You can use JSON. I would normally go with JSON because I just detest YAML. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go with the YAML file. It's also just, it's a bit more readable, this config file, than the JSON counterpart is. I've done both, and as much as I hate to admit it, yeah, the JSON one isn't as readable as YAML. And then finally, do you want to insert a script to do the code gen rather than running npx every time? And yeah, we will, and we'll call that gen. Okay, so normally you would run npm install and pull down all the dependencies based off of what you need, and then you run npm run gen. So npm run gen. While that's running, let's open up config.yaml. YAML, where are you? Oh, sorry, codegen.yaml. And we'll just have a look at what it, so this thing that it built for us. So this is the config file that it generated for us. See, there's our schema at GraphQL, schema.graphql. We've got a null property there. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So don't forget there's documents property, but we'll come back to it. And then we've got generates. So this is all the files that we're going to output. One is GraphQL/generated.ts, which is the thing that we really wanted to output. And then we also have our schema JSON, which is our introspection file. What plugins are we loading? There's a bunch of plugins. We're doing the different languages, whether it's TypeScript or Java or Flow or C#. And then we've got some more and more config that we can do on that. So let's have a look, though, at what file we've generated. And we have now a massive TypeScript file here. And if we scroll through it, it's TypeScript type definitions, and they're big and they're a little bit clunky, and you're like, what are they all representing? And the good thing is you don't need to actually read this file, because like you only come in here when things go wrong, and nothing's go wrong. It's a live demo. We know that those always go perfectly smoothly. I've started creating a resolvers file here. So it's just got an empty object here, and then it's exporting that, and then consuming that here in my index.json and creating a GraphQL server. It's running in Azure Functions, but like I said, you could be running this in whatever, like an Express server or whatever it might be. Now, because this is TypeScript, like the resolvers, it's an object. We don't really know what it represents. So I'm going to say that it's a resolver. And this, if we just scroll up, whoops, that has imported it from completely the wrong location. And it should have been resolvers anyway. So we're going to import that from our generated. So now if I hover over this, you'll see that the type definition knows that there's a query and it's the query resolver and it's question. Because question is the type that we expose, and that's the mappings that we've got there. So for the resolver to be complete, we need to implement both a query and a question. So we can go control space and we get IntelliSense. Query, sweet. And then what do I need on query? I need get random question, and I have question. Let's start with get random question. Now it's going to take some arguments. The first argument is the parent of this handler function that's being called. The second is any arguments that are being passed to it. And then there's context as the third thing that's there. Now there's no parent, so I'm just going to underscore that and ignore it. Get random question doesn't actually have anything passed to it either. So I can just kind of ignore that as well. I'm just going to double underscore because we can't name the variable the same each time. And now I need to go ahead, and I'm getting some errors because, well, it's not supposed to return a void. This is supposed to return me a question. So you see that it's starting to tell me, well, no, like you've got some invalid code here, and I can look at this and obviously tell that there's going to be something broken in here, but it's that, tips along the way that things might break if you aren't aware of them. So consider fixing some of the problems that you've got. I will also just scaffold out question, and this time, question is going to have an ID because we get that passed to it. If we have a look back at our schema, we'll see that when we use question, we have an ID that has to be passed to it, and that can't be null. Leave that open. So if I hover over ID, well, it knows it's a string because that's what ID from GraphQL maps to in JavaScript is there. Okay, so I could return something here, and it's an object, and it knows that it's supposed to be a question object, so it would have answers as an array, so on and so forth. But I want to actually grab the data out of my backend, and this is where I remember I forgot to install a dependency. I'm just going to install Azure/Cosmos. Thankfully, it should actually install pretty quickly because I'm pretty sure I have that cached. But I need some kind of data store that I can get this and download that data from. So I'm going to create a new file. We'll call that data.ts. Whoa. Data, it stopped halfway through. That's cool. .ts. There we go. All right. So here we are. Here is data.ts. And I created a snippet for this, if I can remember what it's supposed to be called, which I can't, because Azure, I need to go into my snippets and remember what I call my own snippets. DS, yeah, I was totally going to remember DS implementation on the fly, wasn't I? Look at that, writing code fast, because that's how we want to go about it. Cool. Okay. Now again, the important thing is really what's happening in the code. So I want to just quickly get it out there and talk about the specifics of it. So let's have a look at this get question by ID async. So we're doing a thing which will get us our connection to our database. So if you're using Mongo or whatever might be your backend, that's where you'd be doing here. This is getting me what's called a container in Cosmos DB. From that container, I then provided a query. So I'm just going to select everything which matched the ID that I'm passing in. And then I'm just going to return the first one out of that because it's really just, it's going to return one based off of that ID. So it should be a select one. I'm then creating this data store and exposing it out of here. But I'm going to want that data store in every single place that it's used. So, I mean, I could do import data store from /data if I want store. So I could do it that way. But it's not maybe the easiest from a testability standpoint, because now I've got to make sure that I'm mocking that appropriately at the import level. What I'd really like is to have it passed in. And that's where with GraphQL, we have context. So I'd like to do data store just like that, because context is the third argument to a resolver function in GraphQL. But this doesn't have a type. It doesn't know anything about this. And this is where our type generator can come to the rescue. So I will come back up to CodeGen. We're going to now add in here config. So I'm going to add some additional configuration to the types that are being generated. And here I want context, and I'm just going to have to check my notes to see what it is. I think it's context type. type. And then we give it a path to where that context lives. So that will be in it'll be in dots, dot slash data slash, TS hash context. So what I'm saying is, here's a file that you're going to import or that you're going to find. And inside of that file, denoted by the hash, is an exported TypeScript type called context. If we come back to data, we'll see that I've already done that here. Export type context. So now back in index.ts, ended up in, where did it go? Back in here. Now I can do context. And this time I can do data store. And we will import that from import data store from data. So if we now npm run gen, so regenerate our stuff, I will have an error because invalid generates config. Oh, so I've got something wrong in my configuration. Excellent. So this is the kind of errors that you can get. That's right. I put the YAML stuff in the wrong location. All good. You need to specify. Wait, no, that's not right. Yes. Sorry, no, it wasn't. Yeah. It needs to be. Wait. What am I doing? There we go. Tab, index. Yeah. So it needs to be relative to the file that you want to use this config for. I'd forgotten to put it inside of that file. Easy enough fix. npm run gen. Okay, cool. So that's generated. If we come back in here, we'll see that we will have some more stuff inside of here. And it looks like that we don't need to have the .ts on there. So it's already determining that. So we could go back and remove it from our code gen. So don't need that anymore. We'll rerun it, come back into resolvers. And now if we hover over Datastore, it's strongly typed. Excellent. So I can return Datastore.get question by ID, and we pass in that ID. So now this one here, the question is working successfully because that exists, but I haven't done the random question. So maybe we'll go and implement that just quickly. So we'll pop down here. We go random. We go. We don't need that for the moment. We'll come back and then return datastore.get. Actually, I did write a code snippet for this, I think, because I wanted to actually make it properly random, not just what I have there. And let's see. Maybe I didn't. Okay, cool. So we're going to do data. So we're going to make this an async function because it's an asynchronous operation to get data from our database. Const questions equals data await data store.get questions. So I'll just get back all the questions and then we'll return questions and then the index math.floor math.random star questions.length +1 length. If I spell length correctly. Okay, cool. Oops. +1. There we go. All right, so that's just going to randomly select a question out of there and return that. Well, that should all be working. So let's launch this up in a browser. And give it a moment as it just starts up all the various web servers behind the scenes. Fun note, I'm actually doing this using GitHub Codespaces as well. So I'm actually not running anything on my machine. I've only just started playing with GitHub Codespaces and it is so cool. Like the fact that I literally have nothing installed on my machine that's running this code except for Visual Studio Code. And then it's just connected remotely into that. It's black magic is the only way that I can describe it because I don't how this works. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we'll refresh the playground because I had it up earlier just as I was testing to make sure it was still working. Let's see, are we there? Yep, should be up and running. Give it a moment. Check the port. Yep, there we go. Loading up our playground. Fantastic. So I should be able to go create a new query, and we'll get a random question, and we'll just grab the question, answers, and the correct answer. Execute. Now, unsurprisingly, this has exploded. Because it's a live demo, we'd always expect something to go wrong. But in actual fact, what's happened is that it's saying, well, you can't return null from a non-nullable field, because I've said that the answers field on question, if we come back to our schema, answers is a non-nullable array of non-nullable strings. I've tried to return nothing, which doesn't make sense because I have answers in my database. But if we remember, our database has things like underscores in them. So the way that it's represented is not actually the same. Now that's where you really want to work out how you can map better to your data store in your backend and your and what your front is expecting to expose. We can do that again using our code generator. I'm going to come back up into our data, and I'm going to inject a new type question model. This is a new TypeScript type that will represent what is existing in my database: ID, question, category, incorrect, answer, etc., etc. And I'm going to say that when we do a query here, instead of returning back just an any, which it currently does, I want to return a question model. Do that there, and we'll do it down at the get all questions as well. Cool. Oh, but now there's a very quick flash of an error. Come back over to resolvers. Resolvers is now saying quite a long wrapped complex error message, but the crux of what that error message is saying is that this question model here, or like you're trying to return an instance of a question model, it doesn't map through to the type that's expecting a return. The type is question. So what we need to do is we need to be able to tell our query that the queries are going to return something from our database, but the resolvers are going to then map that somehow into another type. To do that, I'm going to update my code gen, and I'm going to change the model that is used for our data mapper. So for that, I'm going to add a new config option here, which is mappers. And then on mappers, we give it the name of the type, so question. So that's the schema type is going to map to, oops, not like that. Question is going to map to, what is it, /data hash question model. So we'll save that, and we'll need to open up a new terminal to come and do that generation. So we'll do npm run gen. Okay, we'll give that a moment to update the code generator. Excellent. And if we pop into our generated now, we'll see that search for question model. We'll see it's used up here, it's imported. And if we scroll a bit further down, we'll see that the resolver actually exposes a question that receives a question model rather than receiving a question like our expected return type. So what that means is that this is working correctly now. Our query is now returning the type we expect, but instead we want to add a new question resolver. So how do we map that data model that's on our server to the model on our client? Now, thankfully, we've got a couple of properties that are the same, ID, question, etc. But it's really like it's answers. I need to work out how to do the answers differently. Well, we're going to create a function on here. It receives an argument, which is the question model. And then here we will return question dot incorrect answers. So it understands our model that we have in our database. And then we're just going to concat question dot, actually as an array, question dot correct answer. Now, look, you probably want to do something that would randomize that so you don't always have the last answer as the correct one, but I'm just going to be lazy here. And then we can do things for correct answer, which will be question. And we will now map return question dot correct answer as the return type for that. So we'll save, come back to our GraphQL playground here, hit execute. The server's just rebuilding everything in the background. And look at that. We've successfully updated our mapping to return what we're expecting to return. And we've now got it fully strongly typed. Everything from the code that we're writing in our data access layer to the way that we're mapping that through to what our queries are expecting and the way that our queries are working with our data access layer. And it's all just TypeScript type generated behind the scenes. Now, I actually have no idea how long I've been going for because I forgot to start my countdown clock. So Kevin, feel free to just be like, cut.
No, you're all good. You're all good. You're on time. That's no problem.
Cool. Because I can go all night talking about this sort of stuff. I like this is just it's so quick and easy to get this stuff up and running and included into an existing project. So that's how we can work with these questions and answers and stuff like that. There's more things that we can do with our data generation. So you'll notice that with the resolver, I haven't had to map all of the fields. I only mapped the ones that I wanted. And if we have a look at that, it's because it's got an optional type. So it's got the question mark on the back of that. So you don't have to define a mapping for questions, and you don't have to define a mapping for the fields of those questions, but you can override that in the code gen as well. If we wanted to add a new config, we can do avoid optionals. So if you're like me and you like to make sure that everything is explicitly done, we can set that to false, avoid optional, sorry, to true. By default, it's false. And then we do npm run gen. And what we'll find is that the resolvers, once it picks everything up, it will start saying, oh, hang on a sec, you're not like outputting all of the fields that you need along the way. Oh, optionals, not options, optional. Look at my notes, it's avoid optional. That's what we want there. Run the generator, and then that should pop up an error at any moment. But I'm going to leave that off just for the sake of the demo, because otherwise it can get we'll get errors kind of popping up left, right, and center. Now, we've talked about how we can do data that's going out. So that the query operations. What if we wanted to do a mutation operation? For that, I'll come back to my schema, and we're going to just drop in a new chunk of code, and I'm going to create a mutation, which is answer question. So I can answer a question that's come back in the survey, in our quiz. For that, I'm going to need to provide an ID for the question I want to answer, and then the answer. The answer I'm going to leave as a nullable string, because if you don't have an answer, then you still can submit that as a non-answer, and it's going to return me a new type here called answer. Now, we need to add that to our schema, so we'll do mutation. Mutation, comma, mutation. There we go. I shouldn't have called my snippet mutation, because now it's just going to autocomplete and inject everything everywhere. So we can do npm run gen. That will now generate me some new stuff. And if I hover over my resolver type, we'll see it has a mutation in here. We also have answer model, so that I can do the mapping for the answer as well, if I so desire. And for mutation, and then answer question. So the parent, again, I'm not going to need the parent. That would be useful if you've, particularly when we're doing resolving how a question is resolved. Like if I needed to go back out to the context, like I could get the context also injected to this here. So I could do like an additional database call if needs be. Answer is going to have ID and answer passed in. And then like data store, if I was doing the right operation, but we're not. Actually, no, I am going to need the data store, because I need to know what question it is. And that will be, again, an async function. And we'll const the question, await data store.get question by ID. We'll grab that ID. And then we'll return an object which has the question ID, which is ID, the answer, the correct answer, which will be question.correct answer, the submitted answer. So you can see what one you picked out of that. That will be answer. And then did you get it correct? Well, that will be whether or not question.correct answer is the same as the answer you submitted. Because if you didn't case it correctly either, well, then that's your own fault. And it should have worked. Okay, so I've got an error that's happening there. I think I might be missing a field. I forgot to add question.question. Just so that you can see the question, the answer, and the kind of all in the responses as well. You don't have to do multiple hops or have cache data locally. So there we go. That's all running. Now let's grab a new one and we'll do a mutation. Submit answer, and we'll submit answer ID of 3. I know the IDs of something. Actually, no. Let's use this question here. What does CPU stand for? No, I don't have the ID of that one. I have to get a new question. Let's find out. Let's go to a question I can answer. Wow, I'm just gonna like keep hitting. Oh, that's right. I expanded the normally I do this with just there we go. I can totally answer this one. What does AD stand for on the Windows operating system? Normally I just do this with the with computing questions, but I've expanded the data model to have video game questions in there, and I'm not that much of a gamer. The questions are all provided by Open Trivia Database. If anyone's wondering, I didn't actually come up with 100 questions, but opentdb.com has a great set of questions that you can use for, and I find them really good for demos. Okay, so the ID of 1, and then we'll pick an answer for that. So ID 1, then the answer will be, well, okay, so what would happen if we submitted no answer? We'll go question, answer, correct answer. Yeah, answer, correct answer, and correct. Now, did I get it correct by not providing an answer? The field, is that not what I call my mutation? Schema. No, it's like answer question. Answer question. So that's the name of my mutation. Cannot query field answer on type answer. That's because it is submitted answer. Okay, so surprisingly, I got that question incorrect because I didn't say that it was Active Directory. That's what AD stands for. And then if we provide the correct answer, we get the correct, we get it, set properly there. So that's all all done. Again, this is all type safe through the stack. But this is just a server endpoint at the moment. What if I wanted to put this into the client? And we can start doing this with React. So the last one we're going to do is we're going to add a new bit to our schema. And what did I call this? React? No. Config. Did I call it? No. Oh, man. You go to the effort of writing snippets and it's called React. And then you forget what they actually represent. Damn it. My YAML snippets don't work. I'm just going to have to copy and paste all these lines. Disappointing. Oops. Let me have one last try. React, tab, no, control space. Come on. Okay, fine. We'll copy and paste. Okay, so if we want to do code generation for React, let's just delete some of this stuff so it's a little bit easier. So we are going to need plugins, and it's going to use some of the same stuff. So we're going to use the TypeScript plugin. We're going to use the TypeScript operations plugin, which we have for generating operations. Whoop, there's chat. Hey, I should actually open the chat. Whoops, where did it go? Okay, cool. All good. We still seem to be on time. But now I can actually see chat, so I know when I'm getting in trouble for being over time. That or just like everyone leaves YouTube. Either. Let me get all these appropriate number of things in place. Yeah,
if we can wrap it up within a couple of minutes, it'd be fine. I just want to let you be able to finish this thought and stuff and make sure that everyone gets that.
Cool. I will just do a really quick generation of the TypeScript stuff, so the React stuff. We won't have time to implement it, but I'll put that in the sample that I publish out at the end.
Brilliant.
So with this, I've added a new file that's going to be output. This one, I'm going to walk up from the current location and into the source folder, because this is a Create React app that's going to sit here. And there's the SRC folder and generated.tsx, so a TypeScript React folder, a React file. We're going to use TypeScript and TypeScript operations. So operations is going to pull out the the appropriate files from like that mutation that I just did in the playground. And then I'm going to use it to generate the React Apollo stuff as well. So I'm using Apollo as the way to do React communication. So it's going to generate me some of that sort of stuff. But because it will take a little bit to finish this off, let's go back to the parent directory, git checkout. Actually, let's git stash. No, git checkout star. Let's just blow everything away and git checkout. Let's see. No, git branches. Branches. Git branch. Git branch. Git co complete. Check out complete. Clean. Do all that. Git checkout complete. So undo all of the work. Add in the stuff that I wanted. Realize that I didn't have a save point where I thought I had, and go, oopsies. So I hadn't actually completed, I hadn't actually committed with the React code. Fantastic. Oh, anyway, I'll finish that off off stream and we'll publish that up. But here's one I've prepared earlier. What you'll end up with is some code such as, so this is for another project that I've got that works with, like, it's an online store using React as the backend. And if I can find the right file, maybe not. Nope, I probably can't find the right file, and we're digressing. Anyway, the point is it generates you React hooks, higher order components, or class components, depending on what style of React that you want to work with. And then that will be, it's just strongly typed. And if you're using hooks, then you just use them the same way as you would use any other hooks, provided with the connection to your GraphQL backend. And then it gives you a really nice seamless integration with the way that you would be querying your backend. It's strongly typed based off of your schema and based off of the operation. So your queries or your mutations or your subscriptions that you have previously defined. But that kind of brings us to the end of the time that I've got. Thank you for having me. Those are my various social media handles, my website, email address if you want to shoot any questions off stream and see if I can answer them. Feel free to ping me. I also have, I actually have done a Twitch stream about this topic in particular using React and GraphQL and TypeScript, but I stream every Friday, and at the moment I'm doing a bunch of stuff around serverless and WebAssembly and .NET. So yeah, feel free to join in if Twitch is your thing. But thanks for having me on. Sorry I didn't get to the last bit of the demo, but I'll make sure that the Git repo is completed before I push it. And next time I will just do like a dummy commit rather than blow it all away and just hope that I've backed my stuff up.
No problem. Thank you so much. We've got a bunch of questions we'll go through.
Sure.
I'll go through oldest first. I think they're not in order. Cool. Anywho, I'll go off the first one that I found. Is the GraphQL code generator only for TypeScript was the question.
So you can generate TypeScript, Flow, Java, and C#. Those are the ones that that they've provided. The way that it's designed, basically what they do is they generate a syntax tree of the GraphQL for you, and then if you wanted to write your own like plugins, you can totally do that. They'd have to be written in JavaScript to generate then whatever language you wanted. So if you wanted them in like Python or PHP or whatever it might be, yeah, you just have to write the appropriate amount of JavaScript plugin that will turn the syntax tree of GraphQL into the desired language. But yeah, they have 4 out of the box if you want to do that.
Cool. One other one was, this one's specific to some of the code you had there. Why are the incorrect answers a concatenation of the answers? Can you briefly explain how this maps?
That was just for sheer laziness with inside the demo. Like, because I wanted to return an array of answers. So I was just, I need, so incorrect answers is an array. Correct answers is a single string. So I'm just turning them into an array. And then normally I just run like a sort function over that would randomly sort them so that it's not always the last answer that is the correct answer, because that makes it a little bit too easy for pub trivia.
Makes sense. Take that one off. We got, where do we follow up online about the React hook generation?
So the best place to go would be to the GraphQL code generator website. So graphqlcodegenerator.com. That has obviously all the documentation behind it. It's actually really, really well documented how you can set everything up. And like I said, I will make sure that I complete out this demo and push it up with an example of how to do that. And I'll also share another project that I've done this before on it. So I did a Twitch stream where I did it without code generation, and then a bunch of people said, well, you talked about code gen but didn't do it. So I then followed it up the next week with code generation. So I'll also tweet out the links to both of those videos on YouTube where they're backed up to. So you can see how you can actually add code generation to an existing project, not just so you don't have to start with it. And what I found was when I added it, I actually had some stuff wrong in the way that I'd implemented my schema in the resolvers.
Cool, yeah. The last one here was from Alan Lima. You are using just one file for resolver and it can become huge. What would be the best way to split resolvers in multiple files?
So the way that I would normally tackle resolvers, again, be aware that this is just code that I've written for a demo and I wanted to minimize like context switching and stuff like that. I would normally put either like the nodes within inside the resolver. So like question, answer, query, and mutation, subscription, and like any other types, I would move them off to a separate file individually. If then the functions themselves were starting to get too big, maybe you pull the functions out to a separate file again. But I try and keep the actual resolver function itself pretty small. It's just a shim between some sort of data backend. In this case, I just had that Datastore class that I'd created, and then the mappings that I need to do to return that into the UI consumer. But yeah, the other projects that I've done with this, I've always pulled the resolvers out to separate files. So the top of my file, I'd be import like query resolver, mutation resolvers, etc., and then query, and then inside of the object, it's like query query resolvers, which is the result of that import.
Cool, awesome. Well, thanks very much, mate. You've taken us through a journey, and it's great to see these tools are there to help speed up our ability to generate pretty much entire apps by your demo there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's real exciting stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to get some more questions to you offline and through the stream, and some of the other questions that were posted there and on Twitter and the rest of it. So that'll be good. And same with Sarah. That'll be great to be able to get some more questions to everyone. So thank you very much. That's awesome. And just a reminder, everyone, that the Wallaby JS license question was in Sarah Smith's presentation on Gatsby. How was content populated into a build, the source and the technology? And if you leave your name and email, you can go and score yourself a license. So please do that. I'll leave that open for the rest of this evening. And thank you very much. And yeah, hi, Sarah, you're still on stream. Thank you for staying with us. Cool. All right, now I will just very quickly finish up by showing my last slide so that everyone has the links to be able to follow up on everything. Excuse me for a sec. Sharing screen. There we go. There's all the details if you want to be able to follow up with us. Please do consider sharing a talk for next month. It'd be fantastic to be able to get everyone's input on something that you're keen and you're interested in. If you've got particular suggestions, like you say, oh, I've always wanted somebody to do a talk about this particular thing. Perhaps you could also leave us that. You could make an issue about a talk request rather than a talk volunteering. please do let us know if you have something like that. And feel free to reach out on any of the socials as well, and make sure you stay in touch with BrisJS for next month. I've been Kevin van der Beeken. I hope you can join us next month. And thank you to Sarah and Aaron. We'll hopefully see some more contributions to them in some of the coming months. I know, Aaron, we had a couple of ideas rattling around there. So thank you very much for contributing both those two topics on our GitHub. And I'll sign off, everyone. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next month.